Hi everybody, it's great to be back here on Itamar. The holidays are now behind us, and we're now entering the period of the fall and the winter, and really getting down to, I guess, a new beginning after the wonderful, wonderful inspiration we received after the holiday months, the holiday weeks of special time from Tishrei, the month of Tishrei, and now we're entering the month of Cheshvan. Today is Rosh Chodesh. And it is known that this month is also called the bitter Cheshvan because there are no holidays. But I remember being at a class of the great Kabbalist, the Chalban, the famous Chalban, and he said very, very clearly there are no bitter months, and every month is special. And of course, it's very, very special, the month of Cheshvan as well. And let's enjoy every bit of time Hashem gives us. Every month, every day has its special uniqueness and beauty and spiritual flavor. And let's try to absorb it. Today I want to focus on this week's portion, in Parashat Noach, on the concept of the rainbow. And the rainbow is something which is always the greatest mystery, one of the greatest mysteries which personally have attracted my attention in my studies. I always wanted to research the topic of the rainbow, and I feel I've never gotten enough of it, so deep. But first of all, one of the interesting things that the Torah talks about in this week's portion regarding the rainbow is the constant mentioning of the word covenant. It seems to be almost redundant. If we look at the verses and we begin by opening up to Genesis 9, verse 8. And if you read from verse 8 through verse 17, those are the verses which talk about the whole concept of the rainbow, what it represents, and why the rainbow. You will find that the word covenant, Brit, is mentioned in Hebrew 7 times, which is very, very interesting. It reminds us of the 7 colors of the rainbow. And of course, this represents the Kabbalistic spheres, 7 lower spheres, and there's a lot, of course, a very, very tremendous amount of depth within this. But also the redundancy, and then constantly going over the concept of rainbow, referring to the sign of a covenant. The sign of the covenant God seems to be going over this, really trying to emphasize this concept of the rainbow. And it's done again by mentioning the covenant 7 times, and we have to try to make some kind of clarification to understand this. And I'd like to begin by focusing on the time frame here. According to one of the opinions, the Mabul, the flood, began in the month of Cheshvan, the 17th day of the month of Cheshvan. This is the opinion of the great Tana, Rabbi Eliezer. And if it began in the month of Cheshvan, we know it ended 40 days later in the month of Kislev. The month of Kislev. And it's very, very interesting. If we think about it, the month of Kislev is called Sagittarius, or the Archer. Not called the rainbow, but called the archer, person who actually uses that bow. And the question is why, and how does that fit together with that month, Kislev being the month of the rainbow? And that's really when, of course, we know it's when it happened. According to Rabbi Eliezer, that's exactly when the rainbow first appeared. So I have to try to understand that. What is the connection of the month of Kislev? And we'll begin by mentioning Joseph, the righteous, our famous Yosef HaTzadik, as we say. It is known that when Haman HaRasha, when the evil Haman wanted to find a month, and he did this lottery to try to find a month where he can curse the Jews and do damage to the Jewish people and come against us, he actually did a lottery on every month of the year, and when he came to the month of Kislev, the month of the rainbow, he said, wow, this is the month of Joseph. Joseph is called the strong, Beitan Kashto, with his strong bow. This is a sign of Joseph HaTzadik, Joseph the righteous, and we can't mess with his merit. So we'll look for a different month, and he found the month of Adar. He ended up with the month of Adar. We're not going to talk about Purim now, but that was Haman. So we see that the month of, again, Kislev has to do with Joseph HaTzadik. And what does it have to do with Yosef? What is it all about? How does that connect with the rainbow? So that's another connection we have to make. Another important concept about the rainbow, the great Kabbalists mentioned that it's a very, very secretive, very, very deep concept, and that it's something comes from the word keshet, meaning in Hebrew word kasheh, hard. What is the difficulty about the rainbow? What is it all about? So those are some questions that I posed about this rainbow. I saw a beautiful article. I'm trying to remember the Rav's name, Rav Tzvi Reisman, I think, who wrote a beautiful article. It was written in Hebrew about the rainbow, and many of these ideas I saw in his these references, these sources I saw and he brought down in his article, which really opened up a lot of eye opener to discuss this concept of the rainbow. So I do thank him for writing that beautiful, beautiful essay. But again, I want to focus on a couple of concepts here. And number one, the whole concept of a rainbow is something very, very unusual, of course, but it's something it has to do with the laws of physics. If we look, well, what causes a rainbow? Rainbow, of course, is caused by the white light entering the droplets of water or edim or mist. And when the light goes through these drops, the drops act as prisms. And we know we take light, put it through a prism, it divides it because there are different wavelengths of light, and every wavelength will be refracted slightly differently when it goes through the prism, and therefore it forms this amazing color scheme, the 7 different colors, where usually, of course, we find it that the red on the outside, since it's a larger wavelength, will be refracted and will be on the on the tip of the rainbow, and then moving inward, we'll find the violets, or those colors, depending upon the wavelength again. And what does this mean? What is this concept of this physics? Again, how does it all connect spiritually? But in order to try to, again, connect everything I mentioned and do it, of course, fast enough, we have to try to put this all together. And I think we'll start by talking about a human being. A human being is a composition of the physical body is in, together, of course, with a spiritual soul. Spirituality. I mean, this is a very, very simple concept. We all know that God placed us in this world, a human body, and He placed the soul within our body, and we have to always try. It's always a war between the physical and the spiritual. I'm trying to, again, as we delve in ourselves much more spiritually, our connection to God grows, and we eventually try to shed off our husks, things that hide us from the Creator. The whole concept, again, of the rainbow, and we spoke about that, represents the different color scheme of humanity, of everything in humanity, of course. Is that if we look at the Ramban, the famous Nachmanides, he mentioned something very interesting, that the rainbow, of course, could go in 2 directions. When a person wants to use a bow and arrow, or a bow, he always aims the bow part, the arch, towards the enemy, and he pulls back on the string, and of course shoots the arrow. So the arch of the bow is facing the enemy. But when the bow is reversed, the bow is facing, it's a sign of peace. So the rainbow itself represents 2 sides. It can represent either peace or war. It has both signs to it, which means representing judgment or mercy, peace when it's turned around. If we look at the rainbow in the sky, which way does it face? The rainbow almost faces this direction, which means the arch is up in heaven. God is facing, it's like something metamorphically saying that God is facing the rainbow. The bow is a sign of peace, because again, the arrows are facing towards the heavens, not towards the earth, towards man. And this is very interesting, the fact that, again, we were told that different things, 10 things were created. It's something called Bein Hashmashot. Bein Hashmashot refers to the time frame between, on the Friday, Bein Hashmashot, on Friday, which is a time frame between, of course, between night and day. We know that it's not night, it's not day, it's something in between. It's like a very, 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 very complete, in that it represents a combination of this light and darkness. It's something unusual, Bein Hashmashot. And it mentions one of those things were the bow itself. But then again, the Ramban asks, God says, I will place my bow in the sky as a sign of the covenant, that it will not happen again. So what happened? It was already created, so why is it mentioned again? So the Ramban writes, according to the Ramban, really, we can explain that there are two parts of the rainbow. The rainbow, the first one that was created was Bein Hashmashot, represented the rainbow of war. But now God is again turning that rainbow around, and the rainbow of peace, and that's really what was created here after the sin of after God wiped out mankind with the flood, and then they came out and God gave this sign of mercy. So it's interesting that the rainbow represents these two sides to it, the peace and the war. And if we think about it again, the color scheme. Sometimes something could look in a certain way, but if you look at it together, at the completeness, you have a complete picture. If you look at only one color, you'll see one thing, but if you look at it all together, you'll have a much better picture. All the colors come together, although they may be opposites, and they produce this one unity, this one beautiful spectrum of colors together. And that's what, again, getting back to Joseph, was all about. Joseph, who had a colored garment, a multicolored, multifaceted garment, and Joseph was able to combine all these different colors to one unity and be able to see the goodness in people. And that's why Yosef was called a tzaddik. Yosef also is represented by the letter Vav. That's the letter of combination, to join, because Yosef joins all the forces together. That's the famous sphere called the Yisod. And that's what the rainbow is all about. The rainbow is all about joining the kohot together, bringing all these multifaceted aspects and bring them all into one beautiful picture. And that is what the Rekanati, the great Kabbalah, says, that it's difficult to understand the concept. The rainbow comes from the word difficulty, because in order to be able to discern between the different colors and to look for the good in something requires a very, very special eye. And that's why God placed the rainbow in the clouds. In the darkness of the clouds, we're able to see in the darkness, see the light, see the beauty, to find the beautiful light within darkness. And that really is the whole concept of the rainbow relating to Noah. Because our rabbis mentioned the Zohar Kadosh, what really distinguished between Noah and Abraham. Noah on one hand was a great giant, as we know, and a spiritual person, but his prayer was really sort of inside this ark, more for his family and for himself. He really gave up and sort of had despair upon the world of them returning and repenting. On the other hand, Abraham went out and prayed for the most evil people, believed that there was always a chance of returning, and therefore God gave a sign of the rainbow to Noah as to a wake-up call, and to realize that you should try to always look for the good within the cloud, within the darkness. And this is what Joseph was so powerful and special about. Joseph knew how to do that. That was Yosef, a tzaddik, a special love that he was able to combine everything together, and he was able to see always the good in things. And that is why the month of Kislev, that is the merit of Joseph. And that is why, again, the month of Kislev is called the archer and not the rainbow, because this is the archer who has the power to look and direct and aim that bow to peace and not for war, and to look for mercy and to look for the goodness. And that is in the hands of the archer, of course, and not in the rainbow itself, but the person who has that rainbow within his hands. There's a beautiful message given by the rabbi, one of the great Admorim, called Rabbi Mekotsk, and he says that, as we know, when Jacob gave to Joseph the portion of Shechem, it says, Ani natati lecha Shechem achad, alachecha, I gave you Shechem achad, one additional portion. So to you, Joseph received that portion. And what does he say? Asher kachti, which I took from the Amorites, kashtiu b'chalbi, with my sword and my bow. And very interesting that if we look in the Midrash explains that there's other meanings behind my sword and bow. Bow can also refer to actual prayer. Kashti comes the word bakashati, my sublimation, my prayer to Hashem, which is always a combination. Praying to Hashem, prayer, nothing that we do physically will work without prayer. And that again is the beauty, the concept of the rainbow, of hinting to the prayer. And the Rebbe Mekotz says that a person, just like a person aims the bow, the more he aims that bow, the more he pulls on that, aims the bow and pulls on that string of the bow, back and back, it's going to hit much further. The same way a person concentrates and focuses on his tefillah, his prayer to Hashem, the more he focuses, the more his prayer will reach out in a distance, and it'll really have tremendous impact with his prayer. And that again is the amazing, amazing power of the rainbow. We also think about the fact that the rainbow is a combination of light and Geshem. In Hebrew, Geshem means materialism, the physical. It is really it's a concept where the spiritual, all light, which is always represents the spiritual, meets the physical, and they work together. And the idea again is to look for that beautiful spirituality within the physical world and work on that process of purifying ourselves and finding that spirituality within this physical world. And that's again represented by this concept of the rainbow. The physical meeting the spiritual. Well, there's a lot more. Again, I think I did this quickly, and I just threw a lot of different concepts and ideas about the rainbow, and the whole thing really is to try to cause some kind of an awakening and to think about what that message means and why God said 7 times the word covenant over here, which is amazing, to show us that the 7 colors of the rainbow are, each of these colors are another aspect of spirituality we have to see. If you also look at the colors themselves, red represents, of course, din, judgment, and the other colors, white light represents chesed, and green represents rachamim, tiferet, which is the middle road. Combination of all the colors together, this white light represents purity and represents a completeness and wholeness, in which we have to try to strive for in this world. Right now, again, it's here in Itamar. We've been through a quick summary. We've been through a difficult week. We had 2 attempts this week for terrorists into our community. We had an incident just a couple of days ago where a terrorist was seen at night coming up our hills, and thank God the army, our response team moved quickly. He got away, but no problem there, thank God. And just yesterday, that crazy story where a terrorist was dressed up in white, wearing a white yarmulke, looking like a Jew, getting close to the fence. Apparently wanted to get over the fence and get into the community. We don't know exactly all the details yet, but the camera we have was able to spot, and now the team got there in time, and thank God he did not get in the community. We're in a situation where there's a lot of, on one hand, beautiful light going on, beautiful things happening here in Itamar. On the other hand, we're dealing with this darkness and dealing with these difficulties, these dinim, these judgments going around us, these evil forces that want to come in within, and we have to, of course, continue to be strong and pray to Hashem, that God willing, God will be with us, and we will grow and prosper in here in Itamar. We'll overcome these evil forces, and of course, this prayer is the whole concept of the rainbows. We said, turning the evil forces of war into peace one day, and world peace for the entire world in a true place, that God will shine His abundance upon the entire universe, is also, of course, all part of the rainbow concept. But anyway, right now we are in a pretty difficult situation here in the world, and we have to fight for our existence and our survival, and it's all part of the process of redemption. So we remember Noach, we remember the covenant, and of course we will look for our spirituality. We'll try our best to work to be close to Hashem, and God willing, we persevere and overcome our enemies, and we will build the land of Israel. Well, it's been fantastic to be back again. Have a great Shabbat. I miss you all, and we'll be back soon. See you all again soon. Shabbat shalom. Bye-bye.